Okay, we're into the final session of LogiSYM 2021. That's the final session before the chairman's closing remarks. So this is what's called the takeaway panel, parting advice. So what's this all about, you may ask? Well, I think we've covered a whole host of issues over the last 2 days since 9 o'clock yesterday morning. AI for logistics, digital transformation, FDAs, skills, sustainability, supply chain resilience, visibility, collaboration, and I could go on, but I think you get the idea. So a real fire hose of thoughts and views and data and debate. And I think this can be a little overwhelming for people, for our audience. And I think the key thing is to come to these types of conferences and have something tangible that you can take away and that you can actually use in your organization to positive effect. And that's really what we want to do through this final session, to give people good and tangible advice. And as the official description says for this panel, recommend how supply chain and logistics people can meet the challenges and advance in a transforming world. So we have five esteemed panelists who are going to help us do just that. I'll say they are in alphabetical order. Amos, who is Managing Partner at Hatch Asia. Dr. Christopher Holmes, Managing Director, IDC Insights Asia Pacific. Pernille Dahlgaard, Group Vice President at PSA International. Wolfgang Lehmacher, who holds numerous board positions for supply chain related organizations and ventures across the globe. And Xavier, well, should that be Javier in Spanish? Xavier Perello Pairada, who's Senior Vice President and Regional Head, Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa at SSI SCHAEFER Group. So this session is all about giving advice to our audience out there. So you're not talking to me, you're not talking amongst yourselves, you're talking directly to our audience out there who are waiting for your great advice and takeaway tips. So maybe I can start with asking each of you, considering the last 2 days, about the 2 sessions during the event that particularly grabs your attention and that you can use to describe their importance or implication for supply chain and logistics. Now, I know that you're all very busy people and that you may not have attended all of the sessions, but if not, you can also pick 2 topics that you saw in the agenda. Maybe you weren't there at the actual time of the presentation or panel session, but you can talk about the things that we talked about over the last 2 days and really provide your insights distill that into something that the audience can use and take away. Amos, can I start with you, please? Amos, I think I'm muted.
Sorry. I mentioned that I'm very involved and very interested in AI, primarily because that would shape how skills will transform. So I attended the AI Novelty and Necessity workshop. So what I took away from that session was that within the implementation of AI, where you have multiple data points and how you use that data point, how do you then, from a people perspective, from a skill perspective, how do you then put it back and translate it into organizational effectiveness and implement it from smaller projects to larger projects? That means you don't go full scale. Then you can evaluate the organizational effectiveness on the engagement of the people who will then where AI will then rely on the machine learning of that human being. That's something that really opens my mind on the changing of skills level moving forward.
Okay. Chris Holmes.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Again, I mean, I think you summed it up earlier on when you talked about all the areas that were covered through the course of the 2 days, and are a lot. You know, everything from looking at the different technologies through to also looking at some of the different business challenges that organizations were facing, and really trying to bring all these things together. And so rather than actually talk about a specific session, really, I mean, what I took away, and I think the advice that I would give to people who are, you know, starting to really think about what the future is going to hold. I mean, we've gone through this period where we've restructured, reorganized our supply chain, and again, I mean, we talked about I think in the opening keynote, Stephanie talked about this. You know, the focus on now is really the business operations, keeping things going. She talked around global supply chains, supplier engagement, inventory redundancy, and the focus on energy and waste reduction. But then started to paint this view of the future, and starting to see this shift towards this ecosystem-driven approach, this orchestration, the idea around resiliency, and starting to look at replacing inventory with data, and also starting to think about how we're actually having that design for supply chain embedded within our closed-loop product design processes. So I think, you know, as takeaways, and what I would suggest to people moving forward is know where you are today. You know, what stage of that cycle are you still in? You know, just trying to keep the business still running, or are you beyond that and are really starting to plan for the future and think about the roadmap going forward? And what does that look like? And also, you know, how can we actually take advantage of all those newer technologies that we were discussing?
Okay, great. Okay, Chris. Thanks, Chris. Pernille, I know you were not on any panels, or you didn't give a presentation, so do feel free to say more about yourself or your role at PSA for the benefit of our audience. You may be more familiar with our other 4 panelists.
Right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Bob. My name is Pernille. I'm working for PSA, which is one of the biggest port operators in the world. And we are doing a lot to transform ourselves to be ready for the future. My role is to drive a global finance transformation, which is supporting our entry into the broader ecosystem. So we have built a platform called Callista, which is aiming to enable us to become the orchestrators of supply chain globally. So where we use our critical node or position as a port to create visibility of the entire supply chain. There's an awful lot of echo here. I'm sorry for that. That disappeared. Together with Callista, we also going into. We have launched you could say a business unit called Cargo Solutions, also providing logistics services directly to the BCOs. So part of our strategy is to get much more ingrained into the broader ecosystem, try to connect the ecosystem to create both better visibility and more effective supply chains really across the globe. Also utilize the fact that we have 60 terminals around the world, which can support, from a data perspective, that whole transformation. And looking at the agenda and what we have talked about, I think this fits very nicely with the reimagined transport and logistics using IoT. That's essentially what we're trying to do. So it's a big change. It's also a globalization play for us. We have our biggest port is obviously the port in Singapore, the second biggest in the world, and we are very focused also on building the first mega port in the world. At the same time, we do try to, and we have expanded globally quite significantly. As I said, we have more than 60 ports around the world, and getting all that into one big, really global organization is a super interesting task, which of course is you could say supported by all the technology opportunities that there are out there. So that was a bit of an introduction and some reflection on what I thought and the agenda that I enjoyed. Thanks very much. And supply chain orchestration, I think the word that Chris used just now, I think you've echoed that as well. For our audience out there, also, you do have the opportunity
to continue to ask questions, so keep that in mind for any of our panel members. So if I can go to Wolfgang now.
Thank you very much, Bob. When it comes to the sessions, I would like to pick two. And Chris already alluded on the opening keynote, which was titled When the World Changed. And what I found so fascinating there is the reduction of today's complexity, because we had a session yesterday, the economic outlook, and we spoke about the colossal shock which we have all experienced. And now we have that world where everything is unpredictable. And the question is, how do we bring that together and tie this up also with our future? And that was very well presented by Stephanie. The move from a global supply chain to a regional ecosystem, the move from what we need now, and I think what helped us very well in the current situation, the supplier engagement, and move that to a larger engagement across the entire ecosystem, which you then can call orchestration. Then the whole discussion about the increase in inventory, but that creates a lot of cost and redundancy, which we really don't like. And that's why I'm emphasizing that we need to move towards lean resilience. And that was also Stephanie's line. And then finally, the very important question about sustainability, the reduction of waste, of energy, of CO2, and need to tie this into a future of circular economy. So the future is, in fact, a consequence of what we do today, if we do it in a smart way. And that was the key message, that this is only possible with the help of technology. So we cannot get through and cut through the current challenges without technology, but we have to be mindful and do a little bit of reverse engineering from the point where we want to be in a few years. But that is one big chunk, and that was the opening keynote, which was a session which struck me. Another session which I would like to call out and put into the forefront is, in fact, the skills session. So the skill sets for transformation. And I had the honor to moderate a session yesterday also on port automation. And what suddenly became very, very clear to me is the importance of the human factor. Whenever we invest in digitization and automation, we need to factor in the enormous effort which we have to undertake to skill the people. And it starts with the management that has to be skilled to understand the magnitude of ask, the magnitude of transformation they have in front of them. And then we have to have the people with the skills to be able to execute this. And then we need the people with the skills to use those systems. So it's a massive skilling and massive human development exercise. And what very often is neglected is that part of the equation, and also the costs that come with that, because we see these beautiful numbers sometimes. So we have to make sure that we factor in this. And the conclusion of that is that we, with all the love and the optimism we link to technology, we are aiming, and I think that every human being will subscribe to that, to a human machine world. So it's a hybrid, it's a working together, it's machines and technology that augments our capabilities. And that's maybe my key recommendation, is to think about how to get to that world.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Some very good insights there. I may come back to questioning you on some of those, but Xavier from SSI SCHAEFER.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. For me, I would like to pick up on the cold chain logistics because it is clear aftermath of what has happened after the COVID last year. We all seeing now a number of things really moving forward. I think the last session just now was very interesting to hear a number of inputs from different companies on how they are coping with that, how they see this industry really growing in the region. From our perspective in SCHAEFER, we can see a lot of traction in the market at the moment in the region, especially in Southeast Asia, including Singapore, China, South Korea, because of the e-grocery and e-commerce, and Australia as well because of the pharmaceutical distribution. I think over the last 12 months or so, we all have got used to really buy frozen food, fresh food online, even pharmaceutical products, really. It's something which we probably never did before, at least in Southeast Asia. Yeah. So I think something is happening in the region, and of course the COVID really helped to accelerate investments into cold storage and temperature control facilities, frozen food, but also temperature control for pharma, chilled food, vegetables, and so on and so forth. But again, both for food and pharma, but again, both for manufacturing, but also for distribution. And we see that happening at the moment in many countries already. Already some investments going in, but also we can also feel there is a lot of planning ahead to build new facilities across different countries. Again, we have really, as a consumers, we all have accepted that new habits that have changed us the way we shop. And I would say most of them will actually stick and become permanent over the next couple of years for sure. I'm very convinced about that. So when it comes to logistic solutions and technology to fulfill orders, especially in fulfillment centers, distribution centers, and in a frozen or deep freeze environment or a temperature control, the design of the equipment that goes inside is not a simple discussion, yeah? Because of the challenges of the technology itself, electronics and so on and so forth. But also, again, the point on the people. I mean, at some point of time, people will have to operate these facilities, although we can automate them as much as we can, but you always require people to operate and even maintain the facility. To scale up, upskill the people to really look after the facilities they run efficiently, this is also something we really have to consider. So again, the whole supply chain for cold storage, distribution, and even manufacturing is something very, very unique, but also demanding and challenging. Very different from our normal, groceries, normal electronics, normal to move around. That's very special. So it really requires very specific attention.
Okay. So those are your key takeaways from the last 2 days?
Well, yes, they have another one, which was also yesterday. That was, again, to touch on what Wolfgang just mentioned, which now is about the digital platforms. So I think this is also important. It was very interesting to hear what the guys have to say about the leveraging technology and our business. How do we see the business in the near future? There was a lot of discussion about data quality, of course, upskill the workforce, and again, visibility, how to forecast the business that is coming our way, which is probably different what we had before. Well, this is important to have in place some sort of digital platforms and quality information that decision can be made in new investments when it comes to supply chain business. So it goes into both ways. One is process automation, automate the processes, digital processes we have in place in our supply chain, our warehousing, our distribution center, but also the actual equipment that goes inside. Yeah. So again, getting the right level of equipment and automation, the right level of balance between people, technology, flexibility, and it is important. So today was mentioned a number of times to get the right level of investment with the right level of technology that is uniquely probably customized to your own business requirements. So reliable and fast information system software in summary in place will also allow our own business to gauge what our capacities and capabilities we can deploy to cope with the business disruptions in the next 1 year or so. So I think this was an interesting topic for me to hear yesterday as well.
Okay, thanks, Xavier. Quite a few of you have picked up on this theme of people and the human factor. So I would say, for as long as I can remember, we've been talking about, technology and people, and they have to interact and they have to work together. So I mean, why the hell are we still talking about this? Like 20, 30 years later, why? What's gone wrong? What is it so difficult? Anyone? Or is it yes, Pernille? Pernille, I think you had your hand up.
I think it's because people always feel threatened. They feel that they are being made superfluous, and in reality, some people will be made superfluous. Some people's job will be taken over by technology. Other jobs will come, and if you're smart and you get yourself upskilled, there's not going to be a problem, because there will be a continuous renewal of the kind of jobs that are going to come. But with technology taking such a speed, as we and an acceleration into a lot of areas where traditionally we have, you could say, low-skilled jobs, of course those people naturally get nervous. Combining with that all the talk about artificial intelligence, where I think we forget sometimes that the human intelligence is still superior, and I think I totally concur with Wolfgang's point that it is humans and machines. We're not going to replace humans. We need to find that right balance. And I'm sure, like 150 years ago in the agricultural industry, you had exactly the same issue, right? You had a lot of people working in the agricultural industry. I think one of the challenges compared to back then is that you could back then move those people to other very low skill jobs along the conveyor belts. But as more and more low skilled jobs are being replaced, that focus on humans' development and the ability to learn is increasingly critical. And the people who cannot master that learning, they will be left behind, just like the people who could not master getting from the field into a conveyor belt, they also were left out. So to me, I think it's a very human thing, and I don't think it's going to go away. I think our kids will also say, as long as I've heard, we have been afraid of technology, we have been afraid that technology is going to take over. I'm convinced that the human brain is sophisticated enough to continue to be relevant. But there will be people who are up for tough learning, certainly.
Good point. I think Wolfgang, I think Wolfgang, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think that Pernille touches on a very important point. There is that time lag. Why do we always discuss? So just let's recall how our systems are set up. When we are in the education system, we are taught by people of a previous world. So they were brought up in a different way, right? And they came up with very different ideas. So when we come out of school, the world has changed. The technology has changed. And that is the reason why we suddenly think we are ready for the job, and we realize that that's not at all true. So even if you are a skilled person, you will have a discussion about technology because nobody has told you before. The only advantage we are now having is that people learn without school. So I see now the possibility that the high adoption of mobile devices, of technology in the younger generation will maybe allow us, and I hope that we run these transformations, to educate and train in a very different way so that it's not fear. It's just the natural evolution. But I think the discussion we are having, our generation, is that we have seen a development from the jet plane to the iPhone, in a very short period of time, and every time we had to catch up. So whereas now we have a level of digitization where probably the discussion will gradually disappear and overwritten by realities.
So it's the rate of change of technology that's partly the issue here. Chris, did you want to say something? Chris?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to build on the comments from our previous panelists, because I think one of the things that we are seeing is the cost of technology is dropping dramatically, and also the ease of use of that technology. I think if you went back 30 years, you would have specialist programmers trying to deal with the robots, etc., and it was a very, very precise. You needed a PhD to actually be able to program that robot. Whereas you look at today, where you can actually teach the robot by it mimicking your actions. I mean, that's where we've actually moved to. So again, those adoption rates are going to become much, much faster. And also the cost of the implementation. It's no longer you're going through a 6-month implementation program. You're talking about getting things up and running very, very quickly. So I think that's one of the points that needs to be brought out. But the other one is, and just coming back to this generational gap, where we start to look at the millennials. I mean, they've been brought up using computers. I mean, I've got the grey hair. I can remember the first time I saw a mouse, and it was like, wow, this is incredible, instead of programming in DOS. And again, they're just so used to making the technology work for them. And I think this is going to be also one of the interesting challenges that organizations are going to have to face, is that, as Wolfgang said, we've grown up almost, I wouldn't say fearing technology, but it's sort of been a black box, and we really had to sort of, take a step back, and we needed to get someone else to do it for us. Whereas, I look at my children, we look at the millennials in the workforce, they're so used to just actually making the technology work for them, searching online, finding an app to do whatever they want, and then actually using it. And it's a much more open approach. And I think our management styles are going to have to change to actually adopt that. So I think it's going to be a very interesting transition, as we have the grey hairs like us sort of, talking about the advantages of technology, but somewhere not being really able to implement it. And this younger generation coming in, actually demanding the change, because they know there's far better ways of doing things.
So Chris, do you think in the future that will make things easier in terms of working with technology? Or will it be easier now for, say, your kids?
I firmly believe so. I mean, again, I look at what they're doing and how they're using the technology, and I mean, you see that they're doing things far more advanced that I've seen in organizations I've been working with. Even the organization I'm with today. I mean, the automation that they're currently using and currently embracing, is way beyond where I think a lot of companies are today. And I think this is also a key point, just as a takeaway for the listeners, the attendees, is really to know where you are in terms of that digital journey. I mean, our latest survey work, we talked a lot about planning, and the vast majority of organizations are still using Excel sheets as their planning tool. And yet we're having this discussion around AI, digital transformation, and still there's still a big gap between where people want to be and where they actually are today. And I think the millennial thing is going to be, the inclusion of millennials is going to be one of the interesting areas to look at going forward to actually address that gap.
Any other thoughts on this issue? No. Okay.
Yeah, I could add a couple of comments on that. Actually, interesting discussion. To me, I can see this gap between all of us and the very young people coming up, next to us into the business. The problem we have is all of us, when it comes to technology, the gray hair us, we are always sort of afraid of embracing new technology, because we are not being grown up this way as well. And that's correct. And for us, we always want to see, okay, what is in for me for this technology? How this can help me? But the young guys, like our kids, for example, they don't know any way different they need the technology to grow up. They need the technology to rent, to grow up, but also to live. I can see many companies, including ourselves, probably going back to this discussion on the spreadsheet. We use many spreadsheets. Why? Because that's our comfort zone. And why? We don't have enough young people yet in the companies.
Okay.
So we always demand experience and everything, and then and the people with experience will come with an edge. But if we want really to sort of disrupt what we are doing and allow young generation to innovate, we need to allow young people into the companies.
Okay, thanks. So over the last year, I mean, definitely the biggest disruptor has been COVID-19, and we do keep hearing a lot about its impact and this new onus on, for example, the new onus on supply chain resiliency versus supply chain efficiency. And now it looks like COVID-19 is going to be here for quite a while. But what do you believe has changed the most in terms of emphasis over the last year, and how likely are those changes we thought maybe we could just do for a few months? How likely are these changes to become permanent? I mean, I know, Wolfgang, you use this term lean resilience, which I thought was really interesting. Is this the new paradigm?
I think we are in constant evolution. Well, what is a burden for us is that we always think in static moments. We wait for static, stable moments instead of embracing that we are in a constant shift and that constantly new factors are coming up. Of course, now, and I spoke about that, this COVID-19 was a massive change, but I felt as much, let's say, disrupted in my thinking from the trade tensions between China and the US. So we are coming from one disruption to another. And I think that the technology, that our agility, the way, and Stephanie put that in the chat, she said it's not about learning about a particular technology, but better skills. The better skill is learning how to learn, adapt, and be curious. So learn how to learn, adapt constantly, use technology in a way that that you can manage your world. I believe that the COVID-19 situation is for me a kind of a label for a new constant. We have arrived, and to summarize what I said, the speed of change, technological advancement, you can call it the fourth industrial revolution, that we have to adapt in all what we do and factor in this new situation. And what I liked with the kids is I feel that I try to make technology work for the world which I had imagined and built. I think that the new generation wants the world to adapt to the technological abilities and capabilities these technology and solutions offer. And I think that is a much more flexible entrepreneurial approach. And I think if I have one word as a piece of advice, what I think is worth reflecting on is entrepreneurship. The speed of change requires that everyone becomes a kind of entrepreneur, because we never know what is around the corner and what break might be in our face tomorrow. So entrepreneurship, the flexibility, openness, and learning capabilities are the things which I think we have practiced now, because we have managed, we have survived to a large extent this crisis. And if we can preserve that and make that part of our future, I think we will be better equipped than we were when we entered the crisis.
Okay. We actually have a question which touches on this issue, and it's Chris Crawley, who's Vice President at SkyCall, and he says, or he asks, so one issue COVID has brought to the forefront is the impact of a disrupted supply chain in a world where just-in-time had become standard, especially in the automotive industry. So what other logistics industry changes do you foresee as a result? So can I ask Amos or Pernille or Xavier? These the changes?
I can start. I think definitely the just-in-time is becoming, or is obviously challenged. And I think very much like what Wolfgang said, basically we are going from a desire of predictability to a need for adaptability. So we like the world where we just could foresee and we could plan and everything would pan out. I think that has come to an end, and now we simply need to adapt as we go, which obviously means that the whole just-in-time global supply chain has to adapt accordingly. It probably means that you could say the logic consequence would be slightly bigger inventories. It would be more regionalized sourcing rather than global sourcing. Yet at the same time, of course, those kind of changes, well, the increase in inventory is relatively easy to build up, but the regional sourcing going from a global sourcing is a much longer transition. I think what is clear is that companies are definitely constantly rethinking what is the right supply chain for them, or at least they should be rethinking, so they can meet all those unexpected cases. So we've had COVID in the shipping world. We have been quite excited, or well, impressed, let's say, by the whole situation in Suez a little more than a month ago, which managed to stop a significant part of the cargo in the world. So just as we thought that COVID was coming on more or less under control, then comes this kind of a game changer that makes a short, you could say, external shock that people have to absorb and adapt to. So I think that's really the adaptability is the key. Then I very much also like Wolfgang's point on the innovation and the entrepreneurial aspect. It comes with the adaptability that if you have to constantly react to a changing world, the more you can adapt to it, the better you will cope. And I think thinking in terms of pieces of advice, one thing that I am actually getting quite concerned with, which is coming out with COVID, is an increasing fear. People are extremely concerned. They're fearful for COVID. They're fearful for their health. They're fearful for everything. And if people become so scared of doing anything, that's going to kill their ability to think entrepreneurial, to think innovative, to try out some new things that sometimes will fail and sometimes will be a success. So I think as a society, we also need to think about how can we instill courage in people? How can we make people brave and not just sit and say, oh, there's this terrible virus and I better, stay at home and do nothing. People need to get out there and people need to try and people also need to fall and get some scars, because that's what's going to generate that learning, as Stephanie said, the learning to learn or the ability to learn and not just replicating.
So with all these things that are going on and all these various challenges, isn't it a great time to be in logistics? Isn't it just a fantastic time to be in this industry?
It's an absolutely fantastic time. It's a wonderful industry. And I think from a technology perspective, coming from shipping, we have the beauty of having a bit of a backlog. We are not the most advanced compared to, say, banking or automotive or something. So there's really a lot of opportunities. There's a ton of things that can be done.
Okay. Anyone else agree with that statement? Is it a very exciting time to be in logistics?
I think it's an exciting time because if you look at from a supply chain logistics point of view, what's going to happen with any talent out there and any organization that's planning supply chain is to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because whatever you have learned is not going to be relevant. You need to unlearn it, unpack it. It's ground zero, and then relearn. Take, for example, our vaccination process within the supply chain. It's planned well, timeline well, but COVID hit. Certain demographics need to be vaccinated. The timeline of vaccine needs to be lengthened. And how is this being planned. It's planned based on what they have unlearned on the variant of the virus and how the vaccine can help to protect more. So from an organizational point of view, from a supply chain point of view, how can they protect the supply chain network and also their operations, their revenue, to maximize them when crises hit?
Okay. Chris, we were on a panel 3-4 years ago, and you said to me, it's the most exciting time to be in manufacturing. So is it the most exciting time to be in supply chain and logistics now?
I think so, Bob. And again, maybe I can just share one quote that was shared with me. And I think it was the boxer Mike Tyson who said, everyone has a game plan until they're punched in the face. And I think to a certain extent, that's what we've seen with COVID. But what's been interesting is the learnings that we've seen, how quickly people have had to respond. I mean, we've talked a lot about the technologies that have come in and people have embraced, but also internally as to how people have actually made decisions. Because they've had to speed up that decision process instead of the traditional, right, we'll go out, we'll do the ROI study, we'll go and do the benchmarking, we'll get X number of people. What used to take 6 months has been shortened to a few days. And so I think this is one of the other interesting things that we've seen is not only just that change in approach, but that change in decision making. And I think the other thing, and again, it almost comes back, I think I like the comments around predictability to adaptability. What we have seen is that people are really focused on getting control. Get control of what you can control. There's enough uncertainty out there in the planet at the moment. So make sure you know what is exactly going on within the four walls of your factory or across your supply chain, but just get control of that. So again, get that visibility, get that traceability, because once you have that, then you can actually respond to these shocks, knowing that the bits you are in control with can work. And so I think that's that biggest, that big difference. And again, I think coming back to your question around most exciting time to be in manufacturing, most exciting time to be in supply chain and logistics, I just think there's so much opportunity out there at the moment. Again, the cost of the technology, the ease of the use of the technology keeps dropping. And when we look at what's actually driving some of this change and the fact we can now implement things much, much faster, much, much quicker, it's great what we can actually do.
Okay, great, thank you. I see we're almost out of time, so I will just ask one very quick question, which you're not obliged to answer, but if you are able to, then please do. So every year the committee gets together and we plan this conference carefully, and we come up with the various topics that we think people are interested in, would like to learn more about. So did we miss anything out this year in 2021 that we should have featured? Anyone like to have a stab at that? I'm sure, Wolfgang, I'm sure you would recommend something that we missed out, or did we cover everything adequately? We just did it all right.
I think we should be moderate as well, right? You cannot cover everything. The question is, do you cover and cover what are the relevant points and inspire the people? And I think at least I don't feel in the right place to judge this. It's the audience. But we are, in fact, trying to understand and help people to make sense out of a situation, out of an ecosystem. And I'm sure that we have raised the level of situational intelligence. And I'm always open to new suggestions, but I felt personally, I take a lot of things home, and I thank you, Bob, and the others who were very active for taking and working us through these 2 days.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And I will, looking at the time, I need to bring this takeaway panel to a close, and I really want to thank all our panelists. That's Amos, Chris Holmes, Pernille Dahlgaard, Wolfgang Lehmacher, and Xavier Perello Pairada. So again, thank you very much, and we hope to see you again at a future LogiSYM, and I have a good feeling, I'm sure we will.